Retired Los Angeles Police Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey joins me now from Riverside, California. She's also the author of Black and Blue. I mean, this really shocked a lot of people today. The reaction from the family, of course, was quite emotional. But, you know, this also evoked troubling questions for many Americans. And it's that video, right? It's that video. What would the Attorney General, Bill Barr, see in that video? Apparently, he reviewed it several times, but he decided that there still wasn't any evidence to prosecute. Why?
Well, listen, there's plenty of evidence, and I've said for many, many months and years, actually, that this current administration has no appetite, much like the NYPD, to hold Officer Pantaleo accountable for using a prohibited chokehold. Listen, if you don't believe that there's sufficient evidence to find this officer guilty, let's go to court and let's see. But unless and until police departments, police chiefs, and commissioners are willing to admit that there's a problem, and we know that there's one, then officers like Pantaleo will live to offend again. And that's why 5 years later, nearly, he's still on the payroll of the NYPD. Great deference is given to what a police officer says. And so for that reason, juries, much like the one in Staten Island, decided not to indict this officer. And administratively, when this civilian review board is done, he will still remain on the job, is my belief.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. This case continues, but certainly not in the way that the family wants it to continue. You know, obviously, this was, you know, kind of the genesis of the Black Lives Matter movement, but the record of prosecuting police in these types of incidents is not good at all. There are quite a few prominent cases, but I have to tell you, the one that always sticks with me is Tamir Rice, right? 12 years old, shot dead by Officer Tim Lohman within seconds of that police officer arriving in a Cleveland park. I mean, the boy was holding a pellet gun. So the officer was never prosecuted. I mean, have we had a discussion about the policies here and how it's evolved since then? Have you seen any change?
Well, no, we haven't seen any change. And there are things that have happened certainly since Tamir Rice. I mean, just most recently in the NYPD, an officer, a probationary officer, shot and killed Akai Gurley, and he was given probation. And so this is not unique to NYPD. This happens across the nation. Officers are given a slap on the hand. They're given the gift of resignation. And police departments throw buckets of money, taxpayer money, at the families. They do nothing to change policy. And the officers oftentimes live to offend again, either on that department or another one.
But Cheryl, as a former police officer, though, I mean, what do you think has to be done?
Well, listen, you need to, there's a lot of things. There's not one approach. You need to vote, right? Voting and not voting has consequences. And listen, for folks who didn't vote in that last presidential election, you wound up with a guy in office who would put an AG in office who doesn't have an appetite or a desire to make sure that black folks get justice.
And
so you're going to have to vote.
I'll get to the AG in a moment, but if we talk a little bit about police training, police tactics, do you think something still has to change in that vein?
Listen, police officers know what they can and can't do, and police chiefs let you know what you can and can't do by way of not holding you accountable when you violate policy and in some instances law. And so if you're not happy with the kind of service that you're receiving, then sheriffs are elected officials. Every police chief serves at the pleasure of a mayor. Folks need to get engaged and get involved in actively demanding that their rights are adhered to.
In terms of the AG, William Barr, he personally decided that this would not go forward, but this was a very divisive case, very contentious for the Justice Department. It went all the way back to disagreements within the Obama administration. Why? Why do you think it was so contentious? And I remind you, yes, it is this administration, but it was the Obama administration as well.
Well, it started there, right? This has been a long and involved process. There's no appetite. Great deference, as I said, is given to what an officer says. And by and large, juries, police chiefs, they minimize and mitigate bad behavior. They coddle officers. They circle the wagon. And listen, you can find a number of reasons to not indict if that's what you choose to do. We saw with our own eyes, Pantaleo used a prohibited chokehold. You hear Eric Garner saying, "I can't breathe." There was no reason for that officer to choke him to death other than they wanted to punish him. It wasn't about gaining compliance. It wasn't about controlling. It was about punishing Eric Garner because he didn't turn around in a timely fashion and submit to being handcuffed. And so until you put people in positions of power, chiefs, commissioners, and sheriffs, who think differently about Black lives, this is going to continue.
And I know that you said the way to rectify this is to vote, but I think in terms of taking power to the streets, do you believe we will see more protests, given that it is the anniversary of Eric Garner's death, and that's still, as Miguel Marquez said, that police officer is still working, still being paid by the New York Police Department.
Well, yeah, we're going to continue to see protests, and then, we have short-term memory, and in a few weeks and months, this will be a forgotten thing until it happens again, because it's cyclical, and it seems to happen over and over again, and we get all excited and we march and we lay across freeways and stop traffic, and nothing changes. Chiefs throw buckets of monies at the family. They don't change policy. They don't hold the officers accountable, and it's business as usual.
Well, certainly the families are hoping that they get some kind of accountability one way or the other. A lot of these cases are still winding their way through the courts. Cheryl, thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Now, British police take down a huge modern-day slave